Guys, it's Kristin with AB Fine Art Studio, and I'm here to take you step by step through a clay hand building project. You should have a bag that was provided for you by our studio. It has clay, it has two sticks in there. It has a popsicle stick and an elephant toothpick. We just call them elephant toothpicks, but it looks like a giant toothpick, and a piece of canvas. So go ahead and take your supplies out. I recommend keeping some of your clay in your bag at all times. The clay will dry out rather quickly, and so when you keep it inside your bag, you're gonna make sure that it stays nice and moist. I'm gonna go ahead and pull out my small little circle piece of clay. You guys will have that inside your bag. This is going to be the base of our piece today. We're going to make a coiled beehive. So I'm gonna put this down on a mat, and you guys will have your mats out. I'm gonna put mine on a clipboard so you can see what I'm doing. But you're gonna just set that out. And then the next step is to get out a piece of this clay. So I like to use my popsicle stick rather, to cut a nice strip. So I'm gonna cut a little strip off like this. And then I'm gonna keep this in my bag. I wanna keep that nice and moist. So just remember, if your teacher is playing this, you can pause this at any time. If you guys feel like I'm going a little bit too quickly for you, just pause, and then you can start right back up and we'll get back together. So this little piece of clay is gonna start out in my hands, and I'm going to roll it just like this. Pretend you're back at preschool and you're making worms with your Play-Doh. Okay, so this is how I get my coil started. This makes sure that it's round, it's cylindrical. That's what I want. So I'm gonna take this clay and I'm gonna go back to my mat. You guys are working on your tables, and you should be able to spread your fingers nice and wide and start to roll this out. Now, there isn't an exact science to how thin this should be. It's more of a style. So I'm gonna roll mine out just like this until I like it. Now, if it gets like bigger than your mat, you can always just snap it in half and roll out two new pieces. So if you like it nice and skinny, you might want to just break it apart and then roll again. This is an example of a finished piece of ceramic. So this is the same clay you're using. We're using this clay, this tan clay is called bubblegum clay. And when it's fired, it turns into this beautiful kind of like peachy pink color. That's why it's called bubblegum clay. It's also real gooey and easy to work with. And then up the side of this bowl, this is a heart-shaped bowl, are coils. So this was all made with coils. This is essentially what we're going to be doing today. We're just going to make it into a different shape. And then this has been finished with glazes. So once it's fired once, you're going to get it back. You're gonna glaze it, and then when you get it back after the final firing, it's gonna be this beautiful, shiny, food-safe, lovely piece of dishware that you have. So I have my coil, and I have my circle, and I'm gonna start by just following the perimeter of my circle with my coil. And if I have a little extra, it's okay. It just goes up over here, like it's crossing over the top. Now, clay is really sticky, and it might feel like it's attached right now and it's sticky and gooey, but it's not, because when the clay dries, it'll start to shrink and it'll pull away from itself. So we need to make sure that these two pieces now are completely attached to one another, and that's where the stick's gonna come in. So I'm gonna go around the inside, and I'm gonna just move a little bit of clay. Do you guys see where I'm doing that? A little bit of clay from the coil onto the base. I'm gonna do that all the way around, and I'm gonna do this every single time I add another rung or another coil to the one before it. I need to go all the way around and attach a little bit of clay from the new coil to the previous coil. So it looks a little gunky and junky in there. I'm just gonna use my finger to smooth that out. Your fingers are your very, very best clay tools. Before anyone had tools to use with clay, they had their fingers. So use them, they're wonderful. So here's my first one. Once I have it on there, I'm gonna make another coil. So I'm gonna be making quite a few of these coils. And I'm always gonna start by rolling them in my hands first. This helps make sure that they're really nice and round. If you hear a thud, thud, thud sound when you're coiling on your mat, that means you have an oval, not a circle. So you wanna go back and just kind of squish it back into place. So I'm gonna go ahead and coil down here on the mat. No, 2. So once these are all spread out, I'm gonna set this one aside, and I had because mine broke, I have 2. And really try to spread your fingers. Use your fingertips, not your palms, while you're coiling, and it gives you a lot more control of pressure. So now I have 2 to use. When we keep building this, we're gonna wanna create kind of like a honey pot shape. So I'm gonna go one more time around, really trying to stack my coil right on top of the previous coil. If I try to stack it out on the side a little bit too soon, it'll start to bow out and it will lose some of the stability of that clay. So I want to start out just like this. And just like I did before, I need to move my clay. So I'm going to use my stick and I'm going to move a little bit of clay from the coil below or the coil above, whatever seems simpler to you. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to attach, like on the inside, I'm going to attach these 2 together. So I'm going to go all the way around. And you could always use your finger for this if you don't like to use a stick. Try not to like gouge with your stick. Try to just use your stick like you're spreading butter or cream cheese or peanut butter, whatever you like. Okay, so it's really important that you just take your finger in there as you go and make sure that this is watertight. So you don't want any cracks. If you have a teeny tiny crack, the glaze will probably fill that in. But if you want to put anything in this, you're going to want to make sure that there's no holes. Okay, so if I want to start to give it that honey pot shape, I'm going to need to start to move my coils a little bit out from the side. So instead of stacking it right perfectly on top, I'm just going to stack it sort of angled, just like that. You see where I can see a little bit of that coil before on the outside. And I want to do at least 3 of these where it's kind of going out, and then we're going to go back in. So here's my first one. I'm going to attach. And you guys can kind of see now that that's going to be an angle. So I'm going to angle out. And if you want your honey pot kind of extra chubby, we're going to do a couple more of those. Now, I'm not making super skinny coils, and I like that for building because it gives me a lot to work with. If you feel really confident, like you've made these before and you want to go real skinny on them, you can. It's just going to take you a little bit more time, and you're going to have to be a bit more delicate when you are smoothing them together. So here's my next coil. And again, you always want to just coil as you go. Don't try and make a bunch of coils ahead of time because they'll dry out. So I'm going to go out on this one again, just like before, where I can see the coil. I can see that previous one. That means I'm kind of tipping it out. So I can see that one that was there before. And then I'm going to start to tip it back in here on my next one. So I'm going to go ahead, and because I can see all of that, I'm just going to use my thumb to smooth. You guys can see I can use my thumb, my pointer, and smooth that clay over. And sometimes it's nice if you can see it to use your finger because it gives you a lot more control over your pressure. Sometimes when I use the stick, it's hard to tell how hard I should push. So I'm going to use my hand kind of to support this. Because it's bowing out, it's going to need a little extra support while you smooth. So do keep your hand kind of on the outside when you're doing that. So mine's going out now. And once you have a nice strong start, you can even use your hands to form it a little bit, move it. You don't want to pinch it because that will ruin the coils, but you can kind of form it a little bit. It's my next one. Okay. And try to just work on your mat. I know sometimes it moves around a little bit on the table, but you don't want to get clay all over your table. Okay, so now I'm going to start moving back in again. So this time, instead of being able to see the coil on the inside, I want to be able to see it a little bit on the outside. And that's going to tell me I'm going to start to move in towards the center. So if you guys see that, now I can see this part of the coil. That's good. And you really probably are going to want to use your stick for smoothing this. So you still have to smooth it. It's a little bit hard to see, but I still need to get my stick in there and smooth that. I'm going to use my finger. So again, find what works best for you for smoothing. So I just need to get all in there. Should be like a dental tool for this. Maybe there is, like a little mirror. You can see inside like the dentist looks inside your mouth. Okay, so this is starting to move in. You guys can see the shape is starting to go back, and that's what I want. So I'm gonna do another one. So the weather today for me is kind of wet. It rained yesterday and a little bit this morning. So my clay is staying really moist. But if it's a dry day, you're gonna notice it dries a lot faster. So gonna do it again. So I'm going in again, which means I wanna see that previous coil along the outside. So I can see all of that along the outside of the one before. And then again, I need to smooth it. So do this as you go. If you wait until the end and you just start coiling up and then you have to get your finger in there and smooth all the way down to the bottom, it's not fun at all. You don't want to do that. Okay. So it's starting to get that cute little honey pot shape. I'm gonna do another one. And then we're gonna add some bumblebees for decoration. Because what is a honey pot or beehive without bees? It's a honey pot beehive, yeah. Okay, here's my last coil. So this is mine. Yours should look different than mine, right? We should always have our art looking like our own. So yours is not gonna look just like mine, and yours isn't gonna look just like your neighbor's, but it's gonna be your own beautiful art. So there's my last one. So I actually was able to go around twice with my last one because it's getting smaller, right? Because I'm going towards the center, my loops are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so once I did this, I need to make sure that I get my finger in there and smooth those two sets, because look, plop, there it goes off. Those two sets of coils that I coiled into there across. So I'm gonna bring mine down here, and I'm just gonna get my finger inside and gently smooth clay from this top one down to the one below. And it's kind of moving around a little bit. But if you take your time, you should be able to get it completely attached. So the inside is smooth, and the outside we've left the coil because it looks like a little beehive you'd see hanging in a tree. And we can leave this open, and you can store honey in there, or I don't know, something cute. Okay, so I'm just going around with my finger, making sure that I've got this all sealed in. And you can look around the outside too, like I just saw this little part. I can bring these two coils together, just like that. Okay, so my little bee, it's gonna be 2 parts. So first I need to make a little tiny bee body. I'm gonna roll a little bit of clay in my fingers and then make it like a little jelly bean, like that. You have this elephant toothpick and you can use it. I'm just gonna rock it back and forth to create little lines on my bee, just like that. You could use this like a drawing, you could use like a stick too and just kind of draw those lines in there. I'm gonna set this aside. And then I'm gonna take another piece of clay. I'm gonna do the same thing. So I'm making my jelly bean again, but this time I'm going to grab it and I'm going to do 2 pinches on it. So I'm going to pinch here on one side and here on the other side. And then I'm going to pinch it a little bit in the middle. You see it going in. You don't want to pinch too hard. Like I don't want to go super fast and go right on there because then it'll crack. So I'm going to put that on here. Now my little bee. So you can make several of these. The only thing is, once it's on there, it looks sticky. It wants to stay. It doesn't. It's gonna dry. So I need to make sure I take my popsicle stick or my elephant toothpick and I'm gonna go in and I'm just gonna move a little bit of clay, just like that, from the wing down onto my pot. Make sure the bumblebee is attached all the way. And you can put several of these around your beehive. So have fun with those. Take your time. Just make sure you keep your clay wet. Don't like go in there and make a bunch of bees and then don't stick them on till the end and then they're all dried out. So try to make them as you go. When you're all done with this, you need to put your name on the bottom. And I think you're gonna put your room number on the bottom. And this is gonna dry. It takes a couple weeks to dry and then be fired. So this is gonna go back to the studio. It's gonna dry. It's gonna go into our kiln and it's gonna be cooked in the kiln for about 6 to 12 hours at about 14 to 1800 degrees. So what's happening in the kiln is it's pulling any remaining moisture. So this maybe is air dried. We call that leather or greenware when it's air dried. It might be air dried, but it's still very, very brittle. So when it goes in that kiln, all of the moisture is gonna be pulled out and it's gonna be completely dried. So all that's left, no water, is just the stone. We call it stoneware or bisque. And then you're gonna get that back. It's gonna look like this color. And you're gonna paint it with glaze. So the glazed paint kind of looks chalky and it's gonna look kind of faded and funky, but when you put it on there, you're gonna do a few layers of color and that's going to become opaque and beautiful, and then that goes back in the kiln for a second firing and that glaze turns to like a glass, and so it'll be shiny like this and smooth, and then that will make it food safe. And so that will be your finished product when you're all done. But take time with this. Again, if you have any questions, your wonderful teacher's done this a few times, so I bet she could help you too. But I hope you guys have so much fun creating these beautiful little honey pot beehives. I cannot wait to see them come to the studio, and hope you guys are staying safe and healthy, and we'll see you soon. Bye.